Hello and Merry Christmas. I'm Troy Torres. It's been quite a while since you and I have met here in the studio, and it's going to be a couple of minutes before I get into the Brian Awa story, and it's because I want to chit-chat a little bit here. Someone asked me a couple of days ago why we don't do more live shows, and it was in a moment of just absolute honesty, and I said, well, it's because I'm tired of bitching about everything over and over and over again. It's after 5 years of complaining about the same exact stuff, and the needle hardly moves with certain things. It's just, I don't know. I'm tired. I'm tired of things not changing. And of course, some things do change, and that's great. And there are victories that we get to celebrate and achievements that we make because of your advocacy and the investigative pieces that come along with that and your source material that you provide to us. Some things do change, and of course that's wonderful, but also it's Christmas, and this is around the time where nobody's paying attention to anything of any substance. No one's going to be paying attention to anything until the second week of January, when everybody's broken, everybody is ready again to bitch and moan about everything under the sun and what's wrong with this island because you have no more money. But right now you're spending your hearts out and going into absolute debt. If you are a Gov Guam employee, you are, fortunate enough to have a bit of money to spend this Christmas, very likely. If you are not a Gov Guam employee, you're probably complaining about Gov Guam employees as you're trying to park your cars at GPO and the mall and Kmart. But I'll tell you what I've been doing. I've been doing the yard. I've been working out. And I went jet skiing for the very first time. And I'm also, by the way, I know how to swim. I know how to stay afloat. Let me qualify that. But I don't like going into deep water. So I sort of psyched myself out. And on Monday, Johnny Rosario and I, we went to Bikini Island Club. That's in Marito. It's at the Marito Pier. It's this place where you do all these water things, like water recreation. You can do the banana boat thing. They're going to have parasailing next year. You can go jet skiing. I had never jet skied before I went for the first time. There's this thing called the aqua walk where you put this helmet on and you go underwater. And I swear, when I went underwater, it was like being in the set of Finding Nemo. It was really beautiful. These are the waters off Marito, which of course are like much cleaner than the rest of the island because Marito is like, it's the best village on Guam. And so you're not going to like a dirty place. No, I'm not going to say where the dirty places are and piss people off. But so check this out. This is check out the few seconds from of jet skiing. This was my boyfriend doing the jet skiing thing, and his colorful clothes. That thing can go really fast, and there's this, and it's really fun. And then So here's Johnny, her granddaughter, and I, and Norbert Kanata, who was our captain, taking us out. It was like a 5-minute boat ride from the pier to the first spot, which was the aqua walk that we did. And so here's, no, that's fine. Here's me going, preparing to go underwater, and they put the helmet on me. This is some cool stuff. And I'm bringing this up because I really hope they didn't get my stomach in this. Is my stomach showing? It's kind of showing. It's kind of showing. Son of a gun. Oh boy. So they're gonna put the helmet on me. It's really cool. And we didn't get footage underneath because I think it's like 15 feet deep or something, maybe 20 feet deep. It's not very deep. And it's just gorgeous in the water there. And then they give us hot dogs, and we like break the hot dogs up and throw it in the water, or throw it up into the water, and the fish all come out. It's really nice. So anyway, I'm bringing this up because if you have, if you're finding it hard to shop for someone for Christmas, starting, I don't know if it's going to start this week or next week, probably this week, but at your Circle K, your nearest Circle K location, they're going to sell gift certificates to Bikini Island Club. There's two kinds. There's the $65 one to do the aqua walk, and there's the $99 one to do the full marine package. That's the jet skiing, the banana boats. There's like a lot of stuff, a lot of different things you can do, and it comes with food. And they have the best, bar none, the best chicken cutlet this island has to offer. Anyway, I know, time to get into the news, right? I'm so excited. So a few days ago, we broke the story of a warrant that was unsealed in federal court. 3 warrants, actually. One warrant was for an application for a search warrant for the phone records of Brian Awa. Brian Awa is a Guam Police Department officer. We've since learned that he has not been an active Guam Police Department officer since 2017. So at the time of this search warrant, Brian Awa was not carrying a badge, a gun. He was not acting as a police officer, etc. There were 2 other warrants, and they were to inspect 2 mail parcels that came in that were addressed to Brian Awa. And the feds, according to them, found methamphetamine in both of those packages. Now, we reported that because of how salacious it is, right? You know, here's a Guam Police Department officer who is under investigation by the feds for drug trafficking, etc., essentially, right? We reported it, and then we kept looking at PACER. PACER is the federal court system's archive, to see whether there would be a criminal indictment against Brian Awa. Because normally how these things work is the federal government, when it is investigating a target, normally starts out with applications for search warrants, and those are normally sealed from public view so that the target of the investigation doesn't know that he or she is under investigation. And that sealing will happen for a number of months, even years, as an investigation takes place. And so you never know that a person is under investigation in the federal government. They're very tight-lipped about those things, right? And when the federal government is ready to indict a target that it has been investigating, it will unseal whatever documents they have filed in that case, and then immediately file charges, file an indictment against the target of the investigation. Then there's an arrest that happens, or a summons to appear in court, and then an answer to the charges and an arraignment and all that stuff, then a criminal trial setting. Or sometimes, if the defendant agrees to cooperate, the indictment happens and it's quickly sealed up. And so you don't even know that there is an indictment. You don't even know that there's charges. And that's because this investigation went from one person, one target. You then started to use that target as a source of information so that that target can get a bigger target. And so when the Brian Awa search warrants were unsealed and we didn't see new cases, even sealed cases filed, criminal cases filed, we thought, okay, something's odd here. And, you know, it could be as simple as the feds don't have enough evidence. It could be that he was charged and it's in a case that's maybe like a few months before, maybe last year, maybe the year before that, and it has been under seal this entire time and he has been cooperating with the feds. But if he was cooperating with the feds, they would not have unsealed the warrant, because that's an indication of a criminal investigation. And so something just didn't seem right with this story. And then when you take a look at the timeline of events, you begin to notice that they match up with the prior administration, gubernatorial administration. And you're talking about the Guam Police Department. And you're talking about allegations of drug trafficking. And then you begin to see a universe of players that match up with federal investigations into other people. And we've reported on this before in our stories regarding the Audrey Wolford and Erica Ponick federal convictions for drug trafficking, how those match into federal investigations into high-ranking police officers and former police officers in Guam Police Department, all connecting back to the Mandania Drug Task Force with connections all the way to former Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio. So some things began to mesh together. And then the police chief, Stephen Ignacio, the current police chief, makes a statement in the news, and it was KUAM News, about Brian Awa. And it isn't what he says that is weird. It's how very different his response to Brian Awa is from others. And when I say different, I mean this. In the Brian Awa application for search warrant for his phone records, the only evidence or the only probable cause that the federal agent, his name is Erfel Matsanguian, he's a former Guam Police Department officer, and he is now a special agent with Homeland Security Investigations. HSI led this investigation into Brian Awa's phone records. The probable cause used against Brian Awa were the testimonies and the records provided by two drug trafficking convicts, one guy named Brian Chan and another guy named Jovan Bradbury. There's nothing else in these things, aside from probably the biggest things were alleged phone text messages between Brian Awa and Jovan Bradbury and pictures of what appeared to be crystal methamphetamine. Other than that, there's nothing else. If we compare that to other cases of police brutality and police corruption that have been brought to Police Chief Stephen Ignacio's attention, where there were viral videos of police officers clearly engaged in brutality against unarmed civilians who were not, or unarmed defendants who were not resisting arrest, or federal court documents, such as what has been alleged against Brian Awa, right? But federal court documents that go into way more detail with far more evidence of police corruption against other police officers. Stephen Ignacio has always given the benefit of the doubt to these police officers. Always. Never, ever, ever does Stephen Ignacio ever say that any of these officers need to be removed or that they committed misconduct or that they're not deserving of being in the Guam Police Department. And all these other people, there's way more evidence against them. And sometimes Stephen Ignacio, and I think in a couple of these incidences, Stephen Ignacio didn't even call for administrative or internal affairs investigations. But in the Brian Awa case, he does. And he basically condemns Brian Awa. He basically says he wants Brian Awa out of the Guam Police Department. He's calling for an IA investigation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to show you before we leave this live cast and you go and read this story, because I'm not going to repeat what this story says. I wrote it out, and you can read it if you'd like to know the details of it. It's a very interesting story. But the reason I wanted to go live about this was to show you the differences in how Stephen Ignacio handled previous cases of allegations of police corruption and police misconduct versus how he handled the Brian Awa one. And this is what made me very suspicious about what was going on in Guam Police Department. It's what made me want to find Brian Awa and talk to him. And he answered our phone call and he gave us his story. Let's play one of the previous ones, Eric, maybe one of those press conferences that we went to. So just to show, I believe this is the one where he's talking about Ken Mantinotnia and Boom Mantinotnia. And this was when those federal documents dropped. I think that was the one that you were downloading earlier, and you asked me whether this was one of the ones. It's that one. So this was a press conference that was held following the bombshell that the federal government dropped on unsealed documents in the Red Wolford case that showed these conversations happening between Ken Mantinotnia and Boom Mantinotnia and Audrey Red Wolford, and dealing with how the Mantinotnias allegedly had conspired using their police authority and their authority over police officers to stop the Mandania Drug Task Force or prevent the Mandania Drug Task Force from investigating certain drug traffickers, and to use the Mandania Drug Task Force to investigate competitors of drug traffickers who were within the favor, allegedly, of the Mantinotnias. And there was all of this evidence that came out from these federal court documents, and this is what Stephen Ignacio had to say about that. It was pretty vanilla. Are we ready? You did the wrong one? Okay. All right. So there's another one. There's a news report we were able to pull. Can you get that one out? Not the Brian Awa one, the previous one. And this is regarding, I think this might be a police brutality one, if I'm not mistaken. This is one of those other, police misconduct things. And you hear Stephen Ignacio not using such forceful words in his response to these allegations, where there was substantially more evidence against these officers.
If there's any allegations that I hear of or know of or become aware of as the chief of police, not only do I have a duty to make sure that I look into it, but I think I have an obligation to the people to make sure that I look into any allegations of misconduct by my officers, specifically, and more importantly, regarding the Guam Police Department. Making sure that we hold our officers accountable if they violated any rule or law, and making sure that we do our due diligence to do either criminal or administrative investigations into allegations.
Well,
and so, definitely this is not something we swept under the rug and just kind of forgot because it's over a year ago, and hopefully people don't remember. Absolutely not. This has always been on my radar. I haven't forgotten about this, and it's definitely something that I've been engaged with all along.
So you see Stephen Ignacio giving this vanilla response. I can't remember what that one was, but that was from 2021. It was last year, I think, where the Mantinotnia ones came out. And one of the things that Stephen Ignacio said was, I'm not going to call it an administrative investigation for something that occurred 6 years ago, was his quote. He just totally wrote it off, despite the fact that there were these federal court documents, conversations allegedly between the Mantinotnias and with Audrey Red Wolford, with an alleged conspiracy to use police force, the power of the police, to go after certain drug traffickers who were competitors of other drug traffickers that were being protected by the police. Big deal. Gigantic deal. Went way beyond applications for search warrants. Based on one application for a search warrant for phone records, Stephen Ignacio made the following comments. I believe this is also a KOAM clip regarding Brian Awa.
Awa is not indicative of the hardworking men and women of the Guam Police Department. He is, someone that we need to weed out and get out of our organization. He has no place in the Guam Police Department. He has no right to hold a badge and a gun and say that he is a police department officer. He has no place in this organization. Based on what was posted, I instructed Internal Affairs to initiate an administrative investigation into the allegations that Brian Awa is dealing or has been dealing narcotics. Really stains the reputation of the hardworking men and women of the Guam Police Department. But at the same time, and at the same token, I welcome any investigation into any officers, into any criminal wrongdoing, because especially if they're dealing narcotics, they have no place in the Guam Police Department. any other officer out there who may be involved, your day will come.
Stephen
And there will be a
Ignacio's about face, his complete reversal in how he handled this Brian Awa thing versus how he handled previous things that had far more evidence attached to it, raised red flags in my head, made me completely suspicious of what is going on and that there must be some other story here. And when we called Brian Awa, he gave us that story. We were surprised. We asked him, we initially called him wanting to speak with his attorney, thinking that he had a lawyer. And, we don't want someone to say something that's gonna, whatever, if there's some sort of criminal thing that's happening, right? And he said, I don't have a lawyer. I haven't had a lawyer throughout this whole thing. And then he explained, this goes back to 2016. And then he started telling us this whole story. And as he told us this story, I couldn't help but feel a sense of validation for the story that I've told you all about what happened to me at the beginning of this whole thing. Brian Awa and I have never crossed paths, I don't think. I don't think I've ever met him. But there's a similar story, and the reason it has credibility with me is because of the fact that they involve the same people. They involve the same MO from some of these people, and this underlying issue of police corruption and the use of police power and the cliques in the police department in order to advance certain agendas, to undermine the justice system, and to step on anybody who gets in their way is something I'm very much familiar with. And so if you want to know about this story, read this story that's attached to this live stream. Put your comments, and just know also that this is not the end of the story. This is sort of just part one of our Brian Awa interview. And it's a very telling, very groundbreaking story. And I think that there are people who have a lot to answer for. But as I said at the beginning of this, I'm just tired of bitching about it. And I have no faith whatsoever that we're going to get those answers from these people. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. You have a wonderful and blessed day, and thank you so much for joining this live stream.